It's always great to be back in Crawford County. When I came in tonight, I was talking to Luigi, and he said to me, you know what, would you please tell me, who the heck is George Kelly? I said, what do you mean? He goes, because I was signed a petition, and I thought it was somebody who's going to run against you. I said, well, actually, I was baptized George Joseph Kelly, Jr. Now, I was born in St. Francis Hospital in Pittsburgh in 1948. The nuns brought me into my mother, and they said to her, an Irish baby boy with blue eyes has got to be called Michael. And she said, oh, okay. So I never knew. I never knew until I was going to first grade. My dad was taking me to St. Joe's, and he said, listen, when you get to school, sister is going to call you George. I said, well, why is she going to call me George? I thought my name was Mike. And he said, well, at home, your name is Mike. At school, your name is George. So when I first bring friends home from school, and I'm walking the house, and my mother said, hey, Mike, how'd school go? My friends would say, who's she talking to? I said, well, she's talking to me. And they said, I thought your name was George. I said, school, my name is George. At home, my name is Mike. So now as it's worked out, on the petition, my name is George. In office, my name is Mike. So I do. It's legal. I was challenged early on, back in the primary days a couple years ago, about you can't run under the name Mike Kelly. I said, well, everybody knows me as Mike Kelly. And we had to do something with it, like an AKA, also known as. So it's all legal. And if you sign a petition for George Kelly Jr., it was Mike Kelly, and I'll be on the ballot as Mike Kelly. Much easier to see the name Mike Kelly on a ballot and say, I think I know that guy, than a George J. Kelly Jr. So, and friends asked me about that. I would go to the off-track betting, right? Okay. With a friend of mine named George Abraham, who was a great basketball coach. Gary knows him. Great basketball coach, also a horse racing expert. And I would go to this place with him and would look at all these betting sheets. I have absolutely no idea about horses. Nothing. I know nothing about it. And he'd go, well, who are you going to bet on? I said, I'm betting on these 3 horses. He'd go, did you look at their stats? I said, what are their stats? He goes, well, whether they ran on a dry course or a wet course, how many furlongs, the jockey, and everything else. I said, no. He said, well, how'd you make your choices? I said, well, the one is Dublin's favorite. The other one's My Wild Irish Rose. He said, what? I said, well, I had an Irish name. I picked that horse. And so I think that a lot of times, now, keep in mind, that's true when you go to vote, too. People look at names and they say, I think I know this guy. I'm going to vote for him. If you don't believe that's true, do you know how many people vote for Bob Casey because he was a great governor? And I'm talking about our current senator. And people ask me all the time, they say, well, do you like Bob Casey? I said, I think he's pretty ineffective. I don't think he's kind of a vanilla guy. He never takes a stand way one way or the other. Said, but he did a good job when he was our governor. I said, that was his dad. And they go, are you sure? I said, yeah, I'm positive.
Wasn't that good either.
Well, in some circles he wasn't. But listen, we're at springtime. And it's certainly a very early spring this year. And it's a time for a rebirth. I was with my grandchildren the other day, and we were down in Washington, and you can't believe how gorgeous the cherry blossoms are right now. It is absolutely spectacular. Much earlier than people thought. But as I was walking with my grandchildren, I have a grandson who's pretty observant, and he goes, Grandpa, this is really pretty. What's going on? I said, well, nature's coming back to life. And in the early part of spring, the blooms are the brightest and the most vivid, the fragrance is the best it's going to be. And this is really when nature comes back to life. And he said, I really like this time of year. I said, a lot of people do, George. And so when you think about this time of year, and we're also looking at this time of year for primaries, and I've had people asking me a lot about, well, who do you like? And who do you think our presidential candidate's going to be? Is it going to be Mitt Romney? I said, I don't know. Is it going to be Rick Santorum? I said, I don't know. Do you think it's going to be Speaker Gingrich? I said, I really don't think it's going to be Speaker Gingrich. Now, I have people telling me, look, if it's not somebody really, really conservative, I'm not sure I can get excited about it. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? Well, you know, I kind of checked into Romney's background, and he's not maybe as conservative as I'd like him to be. I like Rick because he's always conservative. He's always right on that side. And I said, I understand that. I understand that. The question is, really, for all of us, who can beat Barack Obama? That's what the question is. And when people ask me, who do you think is going to be our candidate, I say, it really doesn't matter to me if it's Senator Santorum, if it's Mitt Romney. I will tell you this, I'm looking at who has the best chance of beating Barack Obama. And that's the key. And folks tell me, why don't I let it get excited? I say, you know, I got to tell you something. I want you to go back into your early days as a young guy growing up. I can remember as it got close to Christmas, I would sit down and I would write a letter to Santa. And I would write a letter about everything that I wanted. And I was small, like your kids, Brad. And I wanted a pony, and I wanted a helicopter, and I wanted all these wonderful things. And I would write this letter to Santa Claus. Now, on Christmas morning, when I woke up and ran downstairs and underneath the tree, I never got everything I wanted, but I was really thankful for everything I got. And I want you to think about that for a minute. If we do not unite as a party, if we do not let these little things that bother us, this stone in your shoe that's bothering you, if we are not able to unite to win the fight, we're going to be awfully disappointed the day after election this year. We cannot afford 4 more years of this administration. And I'm not a gloom and doom guy, but I am a very practical guy. And I will tell you, after being in Congress for 1 year, we control 1/2 of 1/3 of this wonderful government. All of the conservative issues that we have brought forward and passed in the House of Representatives have died on the table at the Senate. So all these things that people get spun up about, I say, you guys haven't done enough yet. So we took it, we passed it, we sent it to the Senate, it got tabled. Well, you should have done more. So if you understand the process, you understand that Mr. Reid has tabled everything because the re-election of 23 senators trumps the well-being of our country. That's the truth. If it were to get through the Senate, it would stop at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The wave of Republicans in the last election was because of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. That is the law of the land. Mrs. Robb asked me, that conscience clause, what else can you guys do? I said, here's what we can do. We can get everybody excited and get them to go out and vote in November and make sure that there's somebody new in the White House. It is the law of the land. The only thing we've been able to do is to slow it down. We've been able to slow down the spending. We've been able to slow down the trajectory of debt. We have not been able to slow down the course of this administration. We do not control the government, folks. We can control the spending or the rate of spending to a certain degree, but we cannot change it. We cannot change the course that the country is on right now completely. We work awfully hard to get there, but we cannot stop it under the current situation. We've got to maintain our majority in the House of Representatives. We've got to flip the Senate. We have a majority, and we've got to change 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and have our candidate in the White House. Now, when you wake up Christmas morning, it may not be everything you wanted, but we better be darn thankful for everything we got. This is the most wonderful country in the world. We are under siege right now. And I know when I talk to my friends that are in legislation, it doesn't have to be in Washington, D.C., by the way. It could be right here. You talk to Michelle, and you talk to Brad, you talk to George, you talk to Senator Robbins, you talk to all these folks that represent you. They are trying their best, but we can't get everything done at once. The government is designed to move slowly. It is not designed to move quickly. That's the model. We've got to understand that the prize that we're searching for, the answers that we're trying to get to, are going to take time. We can't do it in one election. We can't do it in 1 year. And we're going to have to get through this long winter that this administration has put on us into the spring, into the summer, and into the harvest time. That's just the way the cycle works. And I don't say that to discourage you. I want you to think about the country that we live in. The answer to every single problem we have is to get our economy back on track. We've got to get people back to work. revenues will rise as people become more successful. As businesses become more profitable, they will hire more people. As more people get hired, they will buy more products. As more products get bought, they need to be manufactured. Every single question, every single need that we have is answered in improving our economy. There is no reason for the United States of America to be borrowing any money from anybody, anywhere, to take care of our own needs. And I want you to think about it. Minus an energy strategy is the reason we are where we are today. Coal, oil, gas, tillable soil, potable water. There's no other place in the world that has the same natural resources we have. This is nothing that we've earned. God gave us these things. Now what we have to do is extract them the right way. It creates jobs. It creates an economy that's almost unstoppable. But in order for that to happen, you have to have people at the controls of your government that allow that to happen. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I'm not telling you anything you don't know to be true. I'm not telling you anything that you would look at in your personal life and say, my spending is out of control. I've got to get it under control. I've got to get a turnaround plan in place. I've got to find a way to grow my revenue and cut my spending and get things back on something that's sustainable. It's not that hard to figure out. The key to everything is this election coming up. And I've heard from people for many, many times, please don't tell me this is the most important election I'll ever have in my life. I'm telling you, this is the most important election we're ever going to have. That's not me just talking. That's not a car guy trying to close a deal. That's not a politician making you some promise or trying to scare you. That's the facts. It's absolutely the facts. Now, if we were to bury our head in the sand and say, no, it's going to be okay. We can let it go the way it's going, and we know that it'll straighten itself out. Please, let me ask you something. In your family, if you ever had a problem and you said, you know what? It's too difficult to tackle, we'll just let it work itself out in its own. What do you end up with? A disaster. If it waddles like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. This administration is a duck. This Obama economy has strangled this country. This lack of an energy strategy is killing us. Now you're going to hear this man now start to talk about how he's going to change the world again. He's going to tell you everything you want to hear up until November. He did it the last time. A lot of our Republican friends voted for him. Why? McCain was a rhino. I don't want somebody like McCain who's not a strong enough conservative. So you put the most radical liberal that's ever served in office there? That was the answer? Are you kidding me? Many of our Republican friends said, you know what, I was just sick of holding my nose and pulling the lever. I decided to give somebody else a shot. Do you like what you have? Now, the reason I say that to you is every one of the people that Gary recognized tonight, every single one of them, got elected. First of all, they had to register. They had to get their name on the petition. They had to go out door to door. They had to raise money. They had to enlist your help to get there. Nobody just went in and sat down. The same thing is true this election. Nobody's just going to go in and sit down. And let me tell you, please, this is not about Republicans and Democrats. This is about American solutions to American problems. Don't be somehow cajoled or browbeat into the fact that Republicans just don't like Democrats. I have a lot of friends that are Democrats. Are you kidding me? An Irish Catholic whose grandfather was a railroader? You think I came from a Republican background? Man, if you weren't a Democrat, you didn't get to eat at our Thanksgiving table. These are not Democrats. I have so many Democratic friends that are ashamed of who's representing them right now. Now, this is a Republican dinner, and some of my friends on the other side say, you know, you don't need to beat the president up. I am not beating the president up. I am looking at his policies and trying to find something in there that makes sense to me. And I can't find it. But I know where the answers are. The answers are right here. The answers are each table. When I see the children walking around, Brad's children, Brian's children, you know what this is about. It's not about us. It's not about us. I'm 63 now, soon be 64. It's about them. Man, it's about our great-grandchildren, those to come after us. Why do we have it so good today? I see Jim Durant sitting there. Mr. Durant, I'm going to guess that you're over 63.
37.
Yeah. My dad, I'm going to tell you, my dad, I used to travel with my dad. My dad passed, he was 2 months shy of his 90th birthday, and I would travel with him. He was one of 9. Nobody in his family ever had a car. Nobody in his family ever wore a white shirt to work. Nobody in his family ever got beyond a high school education. But they were all successful to some level in their life. And when we would travel, we'd go back to Hastings where he lived. Now, he's 88, 89, and we're traveling, and he's talking to me, and he's telling me about his childhood, and he's talking about the only person in the family that ever got a new shirt was his oldest brother. The rest all got to wear a little bit later. When they had dinner, my grandma put out one bowl of stew, and they all served each other. They shared in it. And I would say to him, I said, my gosh, I mean, that must have been hard. He goes, what do you mean hard? I said, I don't know how you did it. And he goes, it wasn't optional. I said, it wasn't optional. He goes, no. And as I look into your faces, you all were raised by the same people. They didn't have it made. They weren't born with great fortune. They were born with great challenges and great opportunities and great excitement to enter the fray, to go into the battle, knowing that they could lose, but knowing also that they could win, knowing that they were going to get knocked down. But the key was not getting knocked down. The key was getting back up. Getting back on your feet and say, okay, I may have lost that one, but I'm not going to lose the next one. I learned from that one. I won't make that same mistake twice. They had their own skin in the game. When they got their nose bloodied, it was their blood that was on the street. They understood it. 95% of the people who are in this administration have never, ever worked for themselves or worked in a private sector. Never. Never. They don't know what it's like to do that. They don't know what it's like to suffer loss that affects you personally. They don't know what it's like, and I want you to think about this. We were just talking about having your own business. And I tell people all the time that, yes, I have my own business, and sometimes it goes very well, but oftentimes it does not. And sometimes when things are really bad, it could be in your personal life, it could be in your business, it could be in your organization. Some days you get so tired, physically exhausted, that you fall off to sleep. But the magic hours is between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. And I don't care who you are or where you've come from. When there's a problem, your brain won't let you sleep. It'll wake you up in the middle of the night, and you'll worry about your son or your daughter who's ill. You'll worry about your mom or dad who's ill. You'll worry about a business that doesn't have enough money to make payroll. You'll worry about a trend in the economy that's making it impossible for you to make payroll. You'll worry about all those things, and it's always between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. And one of those trips I was taking with my dad, he said, you look pretty tired. I said, well, no, not really. He goes, business is tough right now, isn't it? I said, no, it's pretty tough. Yeah, it's pretty tough. He goes, yeah, well, welcome to my world. He said, you sleeping? I said, yeah. He goes, you sleep between 2 and 4? I said, no. He goes, me either. He said, let me give you a little advice. I said, yeah, Dad, what is it? He says, get a tablet, put it by your night table. Move the kids' pictures off to the side, put that tablet there with a pen. When you wake up at 2 a.m., you're going to think very clearly. You're going to know what the solutions are. You may walk around the house a little bit. He said, forget about turning on the TV and watching something stupid. Sit down and make those notes that you think about so clearly in the middle of the night. You'll be able to articulate them very clearly, mark it down, put it on the tablet, and you know what's going to happen to you? I said, no, what is? First of all, you got a solution, but secondly, your brain will let you go back to sleep. Because you got to have your rest to do your job. And you got to have your peace of mind to do your job. And I'm telling you right now, there's too many Americans waking up between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., and it's not because of something they did wrong. And it's not because of a foreign enemy who's attacking us. It's because of an internal problem that we have, and it's called our own government, that's making it impossible for us to see the light of day, because they're overtaxing us, they're overregulating us, they have their thumbs and hands and everything so far entwined into our personal lives and into our business lives that we can't breathe anymore. And the answer that the president gives you is we just got to take a little bit more. My goodness. The 1% just aren't paying their fair share. And I got to tell you something. I don't care if he's a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, or libertarian. You don't unite a country by dividing it. You don't create envy and class warfare and then say we're going to fix these problems. You don't do that. We didn't win World War II by doing that, or World War I. We didn't win in Korea. We didn't win in Vietnam. We never ever won anything by being divided. We win by being united. So my message to you tonight is to stay united. Stay united. We can win this. And you know what? It's really good to have a heated debate at the dinner table. It's good to have a heated debate. I sat in many halftimes where a coach would absolutely talk to the offense or the defense and talk about how they were letting people down. They would also say, here's the way we're going to fix it in the second half. And when that guy would come in and knock on the door and say, Coach, 2 minutes, halftime's over, we didn't go out of the locker room saying, you guys in defense are letting us down, or you guys on the special teams are letting us down. We said, let's get together and go out and beat the other guys. That's the answer. We've got problems in this country. There's not one single problem that united we cannot defeat. There's not one single problem in this country that we can beat if we do what we're doing now. A house divided against itself will not stand. We cannot allow the politics of envy and divisiveness to roll. We've got to patch it, and we've got to get back on the message. Now, I'm just going to leave you with one thought, because I know how important pro-life is in this area. Should be all over the country, I understand that. But in this part of the country, it is particularly strong. It runs deep in our blood. Now, I have a little button on me, and it has the two little feet. You know what that all is. I was at a car convention, and the guy who's the president of General Motors, who loves me